Many black people in the South during the 1930s could directly trace their lineage to former slaves. Many black people during this time started to move to cities seeking improvement to their former location in the countryside. Black people stayed in industrial centers until they saved up enough money to move to a better place. Teens in the 1930s had similar lives to children today, with the exception of electricity. Parents had little time for family fun activities, so children were often left to self-regulate themselves. Because of this, discipline was harsh and quick. One major problem that black people faced in the South during the 1930s was the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan, or KKK, was founded in 1866 and by 1870 had spread to almost every state of the Union. Their actions were directed towards white and black Republican leaders. By the 1900s, white Protestants revived the KKK, ending a period of decline. The KKK burned buildings and crosses. They had rallies, parades, and marches speaking against immigrants, Catholics, Jews, blacks, and organized labor. The KKK set up campaigns of violence against blacks to restore white supremacy in the South. Throughout the Klan's existence, Klansmen killed many people, especially black people, in the South.
After the Civil War, the South had bitter political conflict. In the 1930s, the Roosevelt administration actively appealed to black people to join their party. This alienated many Southerners, creating a feel of Northern Democrats versus Southern Democrats. The issue of race came to a head in 1937 with the anti-lynching bill. It was passed in the House, but when it got to the Senate, there was a 6-week filibuster, which led to a withdrawal from the bill.
These filibusters were carried out by former Roosevelt supporters. Roosevelt had a new alliance with working class and farmers, black and white. He was restoring faith in the presidency after Herbert Hoover. Many political figures were very involved.
From 1900 to 1965, most blacks were not allowed to vote in the South. The powerful white men in the South used methods such as violence, literary tests, and poll taxes to prevent blacks from voting. In 1923, there was a law saying that blacks cannot vote, but Lawrence A. Nixon challenged this ruling in the court case of Nixon versus Henderson. The court ruled on March 7, 1927, that the white primary statute was unconstitutional for violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, unanimously. Later, all white primaries were found unconstitutional in 1932.
The economy during the 1930s was horrible. The employment rate was very low. Whites were the most employed during the time. 50% of black people were unemployed. Blacks had to suffer more economically than whites. The wages of blacks could be as low as 30% less than those of whites. When people would search for jobs, white people would be favored over black people. Since plantation owners had land and needed work, they would sharecrop with blacks. The owners would take all the money earned instead of paying their workers. This led to the terrible economy, especially for blacks during the 1930s. The education of black and white children in the 1930s varied,
typically in favor of the whites. The Jim Crow law states that there should be segregated public buildings for these two races that are deemed equal. However, this was not the case. Schools were in favor of the white children. These schools usually had more public funds and therefore were more efficient. Also, few blacks enrolled in school. Most black families needed their children to stay and work on the farms to earn more money. Some white owners of plantations did not even give black children the opportunity to go to school. According to most whites in this time period, blacks simply did not deserve in education. Among the children who did attend, they usually only stayed up until 4th grade. The conditions of the black schools were very unfortunate and disappointing. Most of the buildings had leaky roofs, broken windows, and hand-me-down books from other white schools. These rooms were extremely overpopulated. One teacher usually taught students that were from toddlers up to 8th grade all at once. The material that was taught to these children was shockingly limited. The government did not want children to learn the ideas of freedom or equality, so important righteous documents such as the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution were banned from these schools. The only hope these Southern black children had was the hope from the abolitionists up north. These people sent money to black schools to repair damages, hire more teachers, or buy new books. One specific foundation that was extremely generous with its causes was the Rosenwald Foundation. It donated over $4 million to build new schools for blacks with caring teachers and other necessary fundamentals. Thousands of black students received a wonderful education from these Rosenwald schools.
Religious organizations experienced an increase in membership and attendance in the 1930s after decades of decline. Over all religious sects, an average of 5% increase in attendance was experienced. Radio aided in this resurgence because people could be pious with ease from the comfort of their own homes. People from all social and economics entered in this religious revival.